The small town of Maplewood, Pennsylvania, was settling into its usual autumn quiet. It was late October, and the trees lining the streets had turned shades of amber and fiery orange. Dry leaves crunched under the occasional footsteps of neighbors hurrying home. Porch lights flicked on one by one, breaking the dusk that was slowly swallowing the town. Maplewood wasn't a big place. It was the kind of town where everybody knew everybody, where children rode their bikes on Main Street, and where the grocery clerk always asked about your family. But like all places, darkness carried its own kind of silence here. At the very end of a narrow lane stood a modest house, white paint peeling, shutters slightly crooked but full of life inside. That was the home of Sarah Williams, a single mother in her early 30s, and her 3-year-old son Elijah. Elijah was special. He had been blind since birth. His world was different from other children's. Where others saw color and shape, he lived through sound, scent, and touch. The smell of cinnamon rolls, the texture of his toy blocks, the rhythm of his mother's voice. These were his windows into the world. Sarah always said, "My son may not have sight, but his heart sees more than most people's eyes ever could." That evening, as the chilly wind whispered through the neighborhood, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The faint aroma of roasted chicken and garlic bread filled the little house. Meanwhile, Elijah sat cross-legged on the living room rug, stacking wooden blocks. His small hands traced the edges of each shape: circle, triangle, square. He loved guessing them out loud. "Circle!" He giggled as he held one up. Sarah peeked out from the kitchen doorway and smiled. But just then, something small and unnoticed happened. The front door hadn't shut completely. A draft of autumn air pushed it wider. Elijah, curious at the sudden sound of creaking hinges and the cool breeze brushing his face, turned toward it. "Mommy, the door's open," he called. Sarah, busy with the sizzling pan, didn't hear. Step by tiny step, Elijah wandered out. His bare feet touched the cold wooden porch, then the rough concrete of the driveway. He laughed at the strange new feeling as though it was a game. He kept walking. Down the sidewalk, past the fence, until he was far from the warm glow of his home. By the time Sarah glanced back into the living room, her son was gone. The streets were nearly empty. A car drove by in the distance, its headlights casting fleeting shadows. Elijah stopped walking. His chest tightened. Without his mother's voice nearby, the world suddenly felt terrifying. "Mommy? Mommy, where are you?" His small voice echoed down the street. There was no answer. Only the rustling of dead leaves and the whistle of the wind through telephone wires. He sank to the ground, hugging his knees. Tears welled up. "Please, someone, help me!" But the neighborhood didn't notice. A jogger ran by with headphones in, oblivious. A man across the street loaded groceries into his car, too distracted to hear. A woman walking her dog glanced toward the sound, but shook her head, assuming it was just a child fussing in his yard. To them, it was nothing. To Elijah, it was everything. The shadow in the alley. On the corner of the street, lying near an old dumpster, a stray dog stirred. He was a pitiful sight, thin, ribs faintly visible beneath his fur, patches of dirt clinging to his coat. His ears bore scars from fights with other strays. Most people crossed the street to avoid him. Kids sometimes threw rocks his way, calling him dangerous. But tonight, something in the dog changed. His ears perked. His head lifted. He heard it, the sound of a child crying. The stray rose to his feet and padded quietly toward the noise. There, in the middle of the sidewalk, sat a small boy with tears streaking down his cheeks. His little hands groped helplessly in the air. The dog approached slowly, nose twitching, until he was just inches away. Then he gently pressed his cold nose against Elijah's hand. Elijah flinched at first. Who's there?" His voice trembled. The dog gave a soft whine and wagged his tail, brushing it against the boy's leg. Elijah froze. Then, with cautious fingers, he reached out and touched the dog's head. The rough fur felt real, solid, comforting. You're not going to hurt me, are you?" the child whispered. The dog gave a single short bark, almost like an answer. For the first time since he left the house, Elijah smiled. "You're my friend now, right?" The dog settled beside him, pressing his warm body against the boy's side. His chest rose and fell steadily, like a shield of protection, a bond in the darkness. Elijah stopped crying. He stroked the dog's ears and felt the soft rhythm of his breathing. Though he couldn't see, he felt safe for the first time in minutes. Somehow, in the silence of that lonely street, an unlikely bond was forming between a blind child who couldn't see the world and a stray dog the world refused to see. Back at the house, Sarah finally turned from the stove. She wiped her hands and called, "Elijah, dinner's almost ready." Silence. She peeked into the living room, empty. Her heart dropped. The door was wide open. "Elijah?" she cried, her voice sharp with panic. She rushed outside, scanning the street, calling his name louder and louder. Her voice cracked with fear. Neighbors looked up from their porches, confused as she darted from yard to yard, searching, but Elijah was nowhere in sight. And at that very moment, just a few blocks away, her son sat in the dark with only a stray dog by his side, unaware that this creature, whom everyone else had dismissed, might be the very reason he would live to see his mother again. The night deepened over Maplewood. Street lamps hummed faintly, casting orange halos onto the sidewalks. The town was settling into its quiet rhythm, but in one lonely stretch of road, the bond between a blind child and a homeless dog was just beginning to unfold. Elijah leaned against the warm fur of the stray, his tiny fingers running across its rough coat. Though his face was streaked with tears, his breathing had steadied. For a boy who could not see, touch was his vision, and in this stray's steady heartbeat he felt safety. The dog sat still, as though understanding the fragility of the little life beside him. He had spent years surviving by instinct, sniffing for scraps, dodging cars, fighting other strays, but tonight, his instinct was different, protective, almost fatherly. Elijah whispered, "You're still here, right?" The dog wagged his tail, brushing it against Elijah's leg. The boy smiled weakly. I think you came to help me." The watchful eyes. From the shadows, the stray lifted his head. His ears twitched. He could hear the low hum of an approaching car. His body stiffened. For him, cars meant danger. He'd been nearly hit before, honked at, chased off the road. The headlights grew brighter. The car slowed as it turned onto the street. The stray stood, placing himself squarely in front of Elijah. His fur bristled, his tail raised like a flag. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Elijah clutched the dog's ear. "What's wrong?" The car rolled closer, its tires crunching over fallen leaves. Suddenly, the dog barked, loud, sharp, commanding. Not the bark of a scavenger, but of a guardian. The driver hit the brakes, startled. The sedan stopped just feet away. Inside, a man in his 40s, dressed in a business suit loosened from a long day, leaned forward. He adjusted his glasses, squinting through the windshield. "What the hell? Is that a kid?" he muttered. A stranger stops. The man, David Miller, pushed open his door and stepped out. The cold wind bit his face as he hurried toward the sidewalk. Sure enough, there was a small boy sitting on the ground, barefoot, eyes closed, holding on to the scruffy neck of a stray dog. David froze. His heart skipped. "Dear God," he whispered. "What's a kid doing out here alone?" He approached cautiously. The stray barked again, stepping between David and Elijah, teeth bared, muscles taut. "Whoa, easy there, buddy," David said, raising his hands. "I'm not here to hurt him." The dog growled but didn't move. His eyes locked onto David's every step. Elijah tilted his head toward the sound. "Who's there? Mommy? Is that you?" David knelt slowly, careful not to make sudden movements. "No, son. I'm not your mom. My name's David. Are you lost?" The child's lip trembled. "I can't see. I can't find Mommy." David's chest tightened, blind. The kid was blind. The stray lowered his growl, studying David's tone, his posture. Years of surviving the streets had taught him to measure threats quickly. Something in David's voice, gentle, steady, told the dog he wasn't here to harm the boy. With a huff, the stray backed slightly, though he never fully left Elijah's side. David extended a hand toward the boy. "It's okay. I'll help you find your mom. You're safe now." Elijah hesitated. His tiny fingers clung to the dog's fur. "You promise?" "I promise." Slowly, Elijah reached out and touched David's hand. At that moment, the stray let out a small sigh and sat back down, his watchful eyes never leaving them. He had made his choice. This man could help. Panic across town. Meanwhile, Sarah was tearing through the neighborhood. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Elijah! Elijah, where are you?" She banged on doors, begged neighbors to help. Some grabbed flashlights and joined the search. Others called the police. Her mind was unraveling with fear. Images flashed, Elijah stumbling into traffic, falling into the creek, or worse. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself on. "Please, God, don't let me lose him," she sobbed. Back on the street, David crouched next to Elijah. "Do you know where your house is, son?" Elijah shook his head. "I don't. I just walked, and then Mommy wasn't there." The boy's hands reached again for the stray, who immediately pressed against him. "But he stayed with me. He didn't leave." David looked at the dog in amazement. The mutt's coat was filthy, ribs showing, but his eyes gleamed with fierce intelligence. He wasn't just loitering, he was guarding. "You've been protecting him, haven't you?" David murmured. The dog thumped his tail once, as if in reply. David sighed. "All right, both of you, let's get you home." He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "Yes, this is David Miller. I found a lost child." "Yes, he's blind. We're on Maple Street near Lincoln Avenue. Yes, he's safe for now, but you need to get here fast." Waiting for help, David sat on the curb, Elijah leaning against his shoulder. The stray curled protectively at the boy's side. The three of them formed an odd picture under the streetlight. Businessman, blind child, stray dog, united by circumstance. Elijah whispered, "Will Mommy find me?" David smiled softly. "She's probably looking everywhere right now. And the police are coming too. Don't worry, kid. You're going home tonight." The stray lifted his head, ears pricking again. In the distance came the faint wail of sirens. Elijah squeezed the dog's ear. "Hear that? They're coming." The boy didn't know it yet. But this night, this terrifying, miraculous night, would change not only his life, but also the life of the stray who had refused to abandon him. The flashing lights of a police cruiser painted maple, street in strokes of red and blue. Tires screeched as the car pulled up beside David, who was holding Elijah tightly in his arms. The stray dog still pressed against the boy's legs, growled low, uncertain about these new arrivals. From the opposite end of the street came the frantic sound of footsteps, shoes pounding the pavement, a voice breaking through the night. "Elijah! Elijah!" Sarah's cry was raw, shredded with panic. Her hair was loose, face streaked with tears, hands trembling as she ran. "Mommy!" Elijah lifted his head and reached out, his little arms stretching toward the sound of her voice. Sarah nearly collapsed when she saw him. She dropped to her knees, pulling him into her arms as sobs racked her chest. "Oh, my baby, my sweet boy. I thought I lost you forever." Elijah buried his face against her, inhaling the familiar scent of safety. "Mommy, I was so scared." But he stayed with me. He didn't leave. He pointed toward the stray dog. Sarah turned, her tear-filled eyes landing on the mangy creature. For a moment, shock froze her. This was no pet. This was the same stray she had seen scrounging near dumpsters, the same one neighbors warned each other about. Yet here he was, sitting calmly, chest rising and falling, watching mother and child with quiet intensity. The first reaction. An officer stepped forward, hand on his holster. "Ma'am, do you know this dog? He looks aggressive. Want us to remove him?" The stray barked once, sharp and defensive, as if he understood. Sarah hugged Elijah tighter. She hesitated. Her instincts screamed to protect her son. But then she remembered Elijah's words. "He stayed with me. He didn't leave." David spoke quickly. "Officer, with respect, that dog is the reason your boy is alive. He was guarding him when I arrived. He didn't let anyone near until he knew I wasn't a threat." The officer frowned, unconvinced. But Sarah's heart softened as she studied the dog's eyes. They weren't the eyes of a wild beast. They were tired, loyal, almost human. "Mommy," Elijah whispered, tugging at her sleeve. "He's my friend. Don't let them take him away." The debate. By now, neighbors had gathered, drawn by the sirens and flashing lights. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's the stray from behind the diner. I heard he bit someone once." "No, he's dangerous. Don't let him near the kid." "Wait, are you sure?" Maybe he really did save the boy. The crowd divided, half fearful, half in awe. David raised his voice above the murmurs. "Folks, I saw it myself. That dog stood between this boy and my car. He could have run. He could have left him, but he didn't. He barked until I stopped and stayed at his side until help came. If that isn't loyalty, I don't know what is. The neighbors fell silent. The dog remained still, watching Elijah like a soldier on duty. Sarah's realization. Sarah stroked Elijah's hair, her heart torn between fear and gratitude. She thought of the moments leading up to this. Her baby alone, vulnerable, blind in the dark. If not for this animal, she couldn't finish the thought. She looked at the dog again. His ribs showed, his fur was matted, yet his gaze never wavered from her son. Sarah whispered softly, almost to herself. Maybe God sent him tonight. The officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, the boy is safe now. You'll need to decide, do we take this stray to animal control or... Elijah gripped her arm. No, Mommy, please. He's my hero. Don't let them take him. Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. She nodded slowly. No, he comes with us. The officer blinked, surprised. Are you sure? I'm sure, she said firmly. He saved my son. That makes him family. The crowd gasped softly. Whispers of disbelief swirled, but also admiration. One neighbor muttered, maybe we've been wrong about that dog all along. Another said, if he can protect a blind kid like that, maybe he's not so dangerous after all. David smiled faintly. Looks like you've got yourself a guardian angel, Sarah. She looked at him gratefully. Thank you for finding my son. I don't even know how to repay you. Just take care of him, David said gently, nodding toward both Elijah and the dog. Both of them. Sarah carried Elijah back toward their home, the stray padding faithfully beside them. The boy refused to let go of the dog's scruffy fur. Mommy, can he stay with us forever, please? Sarah looked down at the loyal creature, limping slightly from years of hardship, yet determined to stay close. She sighed softly, but there was warmth in her voice. Yes, sweetheart. I think he already has. For the first time, Elijah's face lit up with a full smile. I want to name him Guardian. The dog wagged his tail as though he understood. The town learns a lesson. News of the night spread quickly through Maplewood. By morning, everyone knew about the blind boy who had wandered away, the stray dog who refused to abandon him, and the stranger who stopped his car just in time. Some still whispered doubts, but most were humbled. People who once threw rocks at the dog now left scraps of food on their porches. David smiled faintly. Looks like you've got yourself a guardian angel, Sarah. She looked at him gratefully. Thank you for finding my son. I don't even know how to repay you. Just take care of him, David said gently, nodding toward both Elijah and the dog. Sarah carried Elijah back toward their home, the stray padding faithfully beside them. The boy refused to let go of the dog's scruffy fur. Mommy, can he stay with us forever, please? Sarah looked down at the loyal creature, limping slightly from years of hardship, yet determined to stay close. She sighed softly, but there was warmth in her voice. Yes, sweetheart. I think he already has. For the first time, Elijah's face lit up with a full smile. I want to name him Guardian. The dog wagged his tail as though he understood. News of the night spread quickly through Maplewood. By morning, everyone knew about the blind boy who had wandered away, the stray dog who refused to abandon him, and the stranger who stopped his car just in time. Some still whispered doubts, but most were humbled. People who once threw rocks at the dog now left scraps of food on their porches. Kids pointed and said, "That's Elijah's guardian," when they saw him trot proudly at the boy's side. Sarah realized something too. This wasn't just about a boy and a dog. It was about a town waking up, a community learning not to judge so quickly, not to dismiss something or someone just because they looked rough, broken, or different. That night, as Sarah tucked Elijah into bed, the dog lay curled at the foot of the mattress, his eyes half closed but ears still alert. Elijah reached down, brushing his tiny fingers through Guardian's fur. "Good night, my friend," he whispered. The dog gave a soft whine, nuzzling closer. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching them, her chest swelling with gratitude and wonder. She realized her son had found more than a protector. He had found a companion who saw him not as blind, but as whole. And perhaps she thought that was the greatest gift of all. The days after that terrifying night changed everything for the Williams, family, and for Maplewood itself. Guardian, the once-forgotten stray, no longer roamed the back alleys or scavenged through trash cans. Instead, he trotted proudly at Elijah's side, his coat slowly gaining shine from Sarah's care, his ribs filling out from real meals. The neighbors who once shooed him away now waved, some even reaching down to pet him. To the town, he wasn't just a stray anymore. He was the dog who saved the blind boy. But for Elijah, he was something more, his best friend, his protector, his guide through a world he could not see. The first walk. It was a crisp Saturday morning when Sarah finally decided to let Elijah and Guardian take their first walk together. The autumn leaves painted the sidewalks gold and red. Sarah held Elijah's hand while Guardian padded on the other side, his steps steady, ears twitching at every sound. "Elijah," Sarah said gently, "hold on to Guardian's harness. Let him lead you a little." The boy's small hand reached out. Clutching the strap Sarah had tied loosely around Guardian's chest. The dog stood still, waiting. Then slowly he began to walk, one careful step at a time. At first Elijah stumbled, uncertain. But Guardian adjusted instantly, slowing down, nudging the boy gently away from a crack in the sidewalk. Sarah's breath caught as she watched. Elijah giggled. "Mommy! He's showing me the way!" Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek. For the first time, she realized her son wasn't just surviving anymore, he was learning to live. A town humbled. Word spread fast. The Maplewood Gazette ran a headline. "Stray dog turns hero, saves blind child from night alone." Soon after, the story reached beyond town. Local radio stations covered it, then a regional TV channel. People began sending letters, toys, even dog food addressed to Elijah and Guardian. At the diner, old men who once cursed strays now argued over who'd buy Guardian the best steak. Children asked Sarah if they could walk with Elijah and Guardian after school. For the first time in years, the town found itself united by a story not of tragedy, but of hope. A mother's gratitude. Late one evening, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring at a half-finished cup of tea. Guardian lay at Elijah's bedroom door, his steady breathing audible through the quiet. Sarah whispered to herself, "I don't know why you sent him, God, but thank you. Thank you for saving my boy." She remembered the panic, the hopelessness, the sound of her son's voice in the dark, and then the image of that battered stray standing guard over him like a soldier. She realized she could never repay Guardian. All she could do was love him, the way he had loved her child without asking for anything in return. Not everyone approved. A few neighbors whispered about danger. Animal control sent letters suggesting Guardian be evaluated before staying permanently with the family. Sarah worried, but Elijah stood firm. One night, curled up in bed with Guardian's head resting on his lap, he declared, "If they take him away, I'll go too. He's my eyes. He's my heart. We belong together." Sarah's voice cracked as she reassured him. "No one's taking him away, baby. Not while I'm here." And she meant it. The test of loyalty. Winter came. Snow blanketed Maplewood in shimmering white. For Elijah, the world of sound changed. Snow crunched beneath boots. Icicles dripped like ticking clocks. The air smelled sharp and clean. And through it all, Guardian never left his side. One icy morning, Elijah slipped near the steps of their porch. Before Sarah could even shout, Guardian lunged forward, nudging his body beneath the boy's arm, steadying him until he found balance. Elijah laughed. "See, Mommy? He always catches me." Sarah covered her mouth, tears spilling. It wasn't just chance. Guardian was becoming Elijah's shadow, his protector in every sense. By spring, Maplewood decided to hold its annual town parade. That year, the mayor announced something special. "We're honoring a hero who reminded us what loyalty means. Elijah and his dog Guardian will lead the parade." When the day arrived, the streets were lined with cheering families. Flags waved, bands played, children shouted Guardian's name. Sarah held Elijah's hand as they walked down Main Street, Guardian trotting proudly in front, wearing a red ribbon around his neck. Elijah's face glowed. Though he couldn't see the crowds, he could hear the applause, feel the love, sense the pride. He whispered to Guardian, "They're clapping for you, my friend." Guardian barked once, tail wagging furiously. The town erupted with cheers. From that day on, Guardian wasn't just Elijah's dog. He was a symbol for the whole town. Schools invited Sarah to speak about kindness, about judging less harshly. Animal shelters reported more adoptions than ever before, inspired by Guardian's story. But for Elijah, none of that mattered. What mattered was the warm fur under his hands, the steady sound of paws on the ground beside him, the unwavering presence in a world of darkness. One quiet summer evening, Sarah sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. Elijah rested against Guardian, his tiny hands gently stroking the dog's ears. Fireflies danced in the air. "Mommy," Elijah said softly, "when I grow up, I want to be like Guardian." Sarah smiled. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "I want to protect people, even when they don't see me, even when they think I'm just nobody. I want to stay just like he stayed with me." Guardian lifted his head as if he understood every word. Sarah's heart swelled. She looked at her son, then at the once-lost stray who had changed everything, and whispered, "You already are, Elijah. You already are." The night settled over Maplewood, calm and safe. And in that little house on the quiet street, a blind boy and a stray, dogs slept side by side, forever bound by a love that had turned fear into hope and strangers into family.